So your title is Soul Cycle. The idea being that in looking at the diagram that we have provided, you start as a soul. Imagine a sphere of light, choosing to become physical, or in other words, to have a physical experience, as we have outlined, is the product of the soul choosing specific paths, specific experiences, so the soul can grow, specific ideas, specific challenges. And this is done by creating certain patterns of energy within the soul, and these patterns of energy will allow part of the soul to render down bit by bit, collapsing down into the center of the soul, as you see in the diagram. These vibrations and these specific frequencies, these specific vibrations, as they collapse down into the center, as they are focused into the center of the soul, first and foremost, create the idea of the planning stage, the blueprint stage, the template stage, where you lay out, vibrationally speaking, all of the challenges, all of the themes that you are choosing to explore specifically for the soul's growth in what you refer to as this incarnation. So this is where you arrange and order, from conversations with your guides, with soul family, so on and so forth, the beginning of condensing down into a kind of pattern, that which represents the blueprint of the physical experience that you are choosing to have. It orders the idea of what the personality will be like, how you will approach things, and the way in which you will allow yourself to experience challenges so that you can transform them and overcome them. And then as the vibrations continue to condense a part of the soul, remember, the whole soul still stays there. That has not shrunk, but the condensation has happened within the soul, so that a part of the soul, some of the material, so to speak, of the soul, within the soul is being condensed down by these vibrations, by these frequencies that represent the soul's path in physical experience, reality. And so as it continues to condense, now you're talking about arriving at the level where the soul is about to be born physically through the physical processes that you experience in space and time, physical birth. And in that condensation, the soul develops the connection again, remains and retains the connection with the higher mind, which is what the soul is. But now you have a reference to the idea of becoming a physical focused being, but maintaining the connection to the soul, which you are now starting to refer to as the higher mind, the non-physical mind, that remains in spirit, so to speak, or remains its natural spirit self, because even the physical body is still within spirit, because it's within the soul. It's just an arrangement of frequencies that allows you to experience the idea of physicality in a different way than you typically experience yourself as a spirit, as a soul. But the idea is that the body is still part of the spirit, part of the soul. It's just a different arrangement of it, a different focus within it. And now you've arrived where you have the physical birth and being a young child, which is still very strongly connected in awareness to the soul, and can, in a sense, kind of expand back out and condense again and expand back out in a way that you would recognize from the space-time perspective as the opportunity for the young child to still go back to spirit, to not necessarily remain as a physical focused being. So for about 7 years on average, a young child still has the ability to be aware of its connection to all that is, its connection to higher mind and soul, to communicate freely, to remember things like other incarnations, so on and so forth, other connections to extraterrestrial forms, so on and so forth, but to also start organizing over those 7 years, on average, can be 9 years, can be less, but on average about 7 years, start organizing in a way that it starts absorbing ideas telepathically from its parents, its society, its schooling, its friends, to lay the foundation, to overlay the challenges, the belief systems, to feed the personality with the belief systems and arrange them that will be representative of the challenges that that soul chose to face. So now this is where they start becoming crystallized into a physical personality based on the belief systems that are necessary in order to experience the challenges that the soul chose to experience in order to discover new aspects, new perspectives of itself, and to grow by transforming these challenges and overcoming these challenges to discover a new aspect of the self. And then, in the final completion of the solidification, the crystallization of that physical persona within the center of the soul, when all the vibrations have, in a sense, finished their task of creating that physical personality within the center of the soul, now you have the older child or the adult that is fully ensconced within the idea of the physical reality it has chosen to experience, the culture it has chosen to experience, the belief systems, the themes it has chosen to experience, and how the personality expresses itself, and how it goes about responding, reacting through the belief systems to whatever it is that will give it the best opportunity to face these challenges and to transform them in a way that will allow the soul to grow. Then the cycle, in a sense, is reversed. As the soul and the physical personality learns more and more, as it chooses to transform challenges in a variety of different ways, the consciousness begins to expand again. And so the physical crystallized idea of the personality that is representative of the physical being starts to soften, starts to expand back out again, and becomes more aware, becomes more connected, aware of its connections to higher mind and other dimensions and spirit and ETs and all sorts of things. And this is the transition that you experience from the very dense third density physical experience to the less dense fourth density physical experience, which is where many of you are now transitioning into. You're becoming a fourth density human. That means your consciousness is a little bit more relaxed, more expanded, going back out toward the idea of what you are as a soul, allowing more of the vibrational connections that created your physical personality to be used as conduits of communication to the soul, to the higher mind, so that you can inform yourself, you can be a better antenna and a receiver for messages from your guides and soul family and angelic realms and extraterrestrials and extradimensionals and parallel realities and so on and so forth. Now you're using those vibrations that the soul used to create the physical personality as conduits of communication. So now these vibrations serve a different function. Whereas initially they were used to collapse a part of the soul into a physical persona, now with the expansion of your consciousness back outward a little bit, you are now able to use those same vibrational frequencies as conduits of communication. And then the next step up, you can see, is more the idea of a representation of an out-of-body experience, an astral form, which you experience when you are dreaming, when the body is asleep, where you are going on adventures and having conversations and having other experiences that the physical personality may remember as a dream. But for the moment, you are a little bit more expanded. And when you wake up in the morning, you may collapse back down again, but maybe not so far. So again, you are retaining the ability to ponder what that experience was about in terms of what you remember as a dream. and you are able to use those conduits of communication more efficiently because of what you learned by having the astral experience, the out-of-body experience, while your body was asleep, when you were dreaming. And so, the idea is that then the astral form, being closer to spirit, between, it is not on this chart, but between the fourth density level expansion diagram and between the astral diagram is where my civilization is. As we say, we are quasi-physical, having the traits of both physical reality and spirit, so that we are actually experiencing the way you would experience reality as an astral being while we are still physical. So halfway in between that second and third stage on the diagram on the right is where my civilization exists, where we are evolving more toward being permanently astral, permanently spirit, but still retain physical properties in many different ways for a variety of reasons. But then as you start practicing more of becoming more expanded as a consciousness, spending more time in the astral realm, making different kinds of connections, learning what you needed to learn as lessons from that physical experience, and then arriving toward the end of the timing that you chose for your physical experience, then you go through the idea of the physical death, you're expanding back out fully into spirit, back fully into the idea of the soul form that you are, that sphere of light, that sphere of energy, that is the natural form of your soul. And so you have then completed the cycle, which then you can decide to do again in a different way, going round and round and round, collapsing into the center, expanding back out, collapsing into the center and expanding back out as you experience what you perceive from your linear space-time perspective to be a series of incarnational experiences that you call past lives and present lives and alternate lives, parallel lives and future lives and so on and so forth. But it's all happening within the soul as you collapse down, expand back out, collapse down, expand back out, and experience the idea of space-time and then timelessness, and space-time and then timelessness. We will talk about the degree of time in another transmission, because there is a difference between the way you experience the concept of time in physical reality, the way you experience the concept of time as a soul, and the way that the oversoul experiences the concept of time. And we will discuss this at another time. But for now, you can see in this chart the idea of the soul cycle, the cycle of the soul, as it creates experiences within itself and then goes back to its full self and then condenses down for a different experience and goes back. So it's kind of like breathing, in and out, in and out, the expansion and collapse and focus of consciousness and the expansion back into the idea of the full awareness of the soul. Now, this idea still all happens simultaneously, even though we are describing it from a linear perspective, as if these condensations happen one after another. That's the linear perspective. But again, we will discuss at another time the perspective of the oversoul, where all of these collapses down to different personalities and all the expansions back up to the soul level all happen simultaneously from the oversoul's point of view. So, we would like to have then presented this to you so you can ponder this cycle, ponder this chart, and understand the idea of what is happening so that you realize that the truth is your body does not have a soul. Your soul has a body. You don't have a soul, you are a soul. And it is within yourself as a soul that everything you call the physical reality experience happens until you decide to expand back out and experience yourself once again as the full soul that you are, always have been, and forever shall be, because you are eternal and you are infinite, and that is who you are, and that is what you are as an aspect of all that is. So we thank you for allowing us to share this idea with you this day of your time. We will present this to you again in this session as a form of meditation so that you can truly lock this idea in and feel the vibrations of this idea and understand how to incorporate this concept within your daily life. So we will do that in our meditation in this transmission. But for now, we thank you for allowing us to share this with you, and in return for the gift you are giving us of experiencing all of you, I ask, in what way may we continue to be of service to you? Please begin with your dialogues and your questions if you wish.
Dear Bashar, what do I do when I don't know what my highest excitement is? Sometimes it feels like following my highest excitement is not leading me to the synchronicity and effortlessness I would expect, which leads me to not trusting my excitement and feeling confused. Other times, I just simply am not sure about what my highest excitement is, and I'm left confused, overwhelmed, and lost. Other times, when I think I'm clear on what excites me the most, I find moving towards that direction is met with obstacles, resistance, struggle, and general effort. I would love some guidance on what to do when you are feeling like you don't really know what excites you, what is your highest excitement, and or when it seems like following your highest excitement is met with more struggle and obstacles. Thank you so much.
Well, first of all, again, we remind you that acting on your excitement does not have to be acting on huge things like big projects or careers. Everyday things, all you have to do is simply pick the one that has a little bit more attractiveness, curiosity, excitement, or passion connected to it. It can be as simple as taking a walk or reading a book. Just decide what seems more attractive at that moment and keep choosing things that have more attraction than any other ordinary daily thing. And it will build and it will grow. But it also sounds like you're confusing the idea that there is red light and green light synchronicity, because sometimes even things that do represent your excitement, synchronicity is telling you this isn't the time to act on it, and so it will present an inability to do so. But the other obstacles that may come up may simply be the idea of how it is you're willing to face challenges, because remember, the reflective mirror in the formula is one of the things that brings to your attention any belief systems you may be holding on to that are out of alignment with your excitement, but you have to face them. You can't just assume that following your passion means you will never have to look at the ideas that are out of alignment with your passion in your belief system. That's the exact thing you're supposed to be doing, is revealing all the beliefs within you that are negative, fear-based, or out of alignment, and dealing with them and finding out why you're holding on to them. So part of your excitement is to discover the things within you that are not your excitement, that seem like challenges. They don't have to be experienced as obstacles, but they will come as challenges, but you have to stay in a positive state, which is also part of the formula, in order to get a benefit of how you approach them to get and extract an advantage out of that experience. So even if something manifests that you objectively don't prefer, by staying in the positive state, you will still be able to get a beneficial effect out of the way that you look at it and the way you examine why it's there and why you may be holding on to a belief system that doesn't serve you. So you have to let go of all of these definitions of what you expect to happen, what you think is supposed to happen, and just deal with what's happening in the moment from a positive vibrational position in life, so you can get a benefit out of all of it, and keep it simple when we think of the idea of acting on your passion, instead of assuming it has to be some grand adventure. It can be everyday things. For example, the fact that you asked this question obviously was one of the more exciting choices that you decided was, at that time, the most exciting choice for you to do. So when this conversation is over, all you have to do is look around for whatever obvious things exist for you to act on. Take a walk, read a book, talk to a friend, eat a meal, and just keep picking the ones that are a little bit more exciting than anything else, that you have more ability to act on than anything else, and just keep doing that. It will lead to other things. We understand this is a very condensed, very rapid, very simplistic answer, but without actually engaging with you much more deeply in a private or personal conversation, this is what we can give you at this time to help you understand the whole process of how synchronicity works. When it's green light synchronicity, it allows you the ability to act on things. When it's red light synchronicity, it says this may be representative of your passion, but this is not the step to take right now. So look around for something else that you need to do rather than feeling like you're banging your head against an obstacle. Don't just stay there and try to force your way through it. Red light synchronicity may be saying this is not the step to take right now. Look for something you are able to act on.
Hi, Bashar.
And to you, good day.
I'm seeing your messages and videos for some time now. I'm so excited to have this meeting with you.
We have deep appreciation for the co-creation of this interaction with you as well.
I would hope if you could please help me understand a little more about the idea of physical experience related to the concept of being a projection of this consciousness.
Yes, well, we sort of just described all of that in the monologue.
Yes.
So the idea, again, is that there are vibrations, frequencies of energy within the soul, frequencies of light that cause patterns within the soul. Those patterns are focused by the soul in a way that projects those patterns into a kind of condensed focus point within the center of the soul, so to speak. And that projection of those patterns, that condensation of those energy patterns, creates a focal point in the soul that you call your physical personality. So it's projected that way. And because it is projected by those vibrations, those frequencies, then the physical personality perceives the idea of a reality around itself, which is made up of those frequencies. In a sense, it's almost like the physical personality seed or crystal at the center of the soul is seeing its reality projected on the inside surface of the sphere of the soul, as if that is the theater, that is the screen, 360 degrees in all direction, upon which the crystalline seed projects the idea of its consciousness, of its reality outside of itself, because what it's actually seeing is the, so to speak, inside of the sphere of the soul that it is. And that's where its holographic projection plays out, seemingly around itself, because the physical personality is concentrated at the center of the sphere that is the soul. Does that make sense? Does that answer your question?
It makes sense, yes. But the question is about, I am perceiving this reality in, are you perceiving my reality? You are perceiving your reality?
Yes.
It's
But we are agreeing to some degree to create something similar enough that we can talk about things as if we are sharing the same reality, even though we are creating our own reality. We're creating our own version of reality based on our connection and communications with each other, with everyone, to create a reality that is similar enough to the reality you're creating so that we can create what appears to be a shared reality, even though it is actually different realities.
The experience is everything in the same moment.
Yes. But you only experience what you're focused on.
Yes.
So there are many aspects of what we are creating that are not visible yet, or may never be visible, because you may not need to create your version of that in order to experience it, because it may not be relevant to do so. But what you call the idea of the future are simply elements of the realities that we are creating with each other that are not visible yet, but they are there. So they become visible when it is relevant for them to become visible, because that's what you're now focused on. And from your linear space-time perspective, you call that becoming visible part the future.
Yes.
And the part that now goes invisible but is still there, you call the past. But all of it's there. It's just that it's different about what part of it becomes visible to you at any given moment in the present.
So what I experience now with you,
Yes.
from my point of view, my perspective, it's a projection
Yes.
of my consciousness. You are perceiving the same, but in your point of view.
I am perceiving something similar enough that we think it's the same. Yes.
Okay. That's one of my questions.
Yes, it's very similar to what you're experiencing electronically now in this particular exchange. In other words, you know that you're not actually seeing the physical body of the channel. You're seeing an image that has been electronically converted into images and sound that then open up on your computer so that you can see a representation of the channel. You're not actually seeing the channel's body directly, but you're interacting with it in a way that lets you know that there is such a being as the channel who is channeling a being like us, but you're not actually seeing the channel's body directly. You're seeing a projection. So it's similar to that idea.
That's actually the same feeling and like information. It's flowing through me. The same thing that I was feeling, it's what you just said. So
Yes.
it makes perfect sense. So thank you so much.
Yes, you are so welcome.
Is there a difference between an angelic or spirit guide or an extraterrestrial
Well, yes.
being?
Yes. Although many of us have similar qualities, and so sometimes it can be challenging to tell us apart. Because, as I said, we have many of the qualities of spirit, and so vibrationally you may still think you're speaking to a spirit, even if you're speaking to an extraterrestrial, or vice versa. You may be speaking to an extraterrestrial that you think is a spirit. You may be talking to a spirit that you think is an extraterrestrial, because sometimes it's challenging to tell us apart. Nevertheless, yes, there is a difference between the idea of an angelic being that has never been physical, a spirit guide which may have been physical in its experience, or members of your soul family that may choose to have been physical and taking turns playing different parts for you in different lives, so to speak. So spirit guides can also be someone who has been part of your soul family or doesn't have to be. It can be someone who, in a sense, is being trained as a spirit guide, and based on their level of skill and their particular choices of what they would like to do, they may be, so to speak, assigned to different people to help them grow as a spirit guide, to learn how to communicate and help people who have chosen to have physical experiences. So yes, there are differences in the way that the beings may experience themselves in different dimensions and different realms, but ultimately they can sort of function in a similar way.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Yes.
I don't know if now I'm allowed to ask a last question.
Well, you just asked a question, so I suppose you can ask another one.
It's difficult to me to imagine extraterrestrials since I was a child, specifically the what we call here the grays.
Yes, well, they're not truly extraterrestrials in the classic sense. They are mutated humans from a parallel version of Earth.
Yes. This idea or concept, although I found it fascinating, and it really starts piquing the curiosity of my experience, but it's also terrifying to me. I
Why?
can understand why.
Well, probably because you've had those experiences, you've had those encounters, and as we have explained, the idea of beings that are operating on a different frequency, whether it's higher or simply representative of a different reality, can feel to your physical mind something similar to the idea of the spirit realm vibration, and to the physical mind, when it's exposed to a vibration of another dimension, another reality, or a spirit realm, may react to that frequency as if it is dying, because that's what that frequency represents to the physical mind. And so the limbic brain will react as a fight or flight survival mode suddenly, because being exposed to that energy may make it feel like it's about to die, even though it may not actually be about to die. It may feel like it's about to die by being exposed to that energy. And that's where the fear reaction comes up. It's a survival mode reaction of the limbic system in the physical mind.
Thank you so much.
Yes. There is nothing to be afraid of, but we understand that your body may react that way.
Yes. That concept also makes very, very perfect sense to me.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Well, thank you very much. Aveo.
Ave.
Hi, Bashar. I just watched an excellent lecture of yours about letting things in and letting go of the things that are not meant for us. I'm just wondering, regarding things that are not meant for us, why do we want them so badly? Such as the wrong person in a relationship. Just, and asking to let go of, the desire so much and it just not going away. Can you help me understand why we so badly are drawn to things that are actually not a good match for us, or not a match with our frequency and vibration? Thank you so much.
They're in your life for a reason, but not necessarily the reasons you think. And it's the insistence and expectation in your belief system about why you think those people should be in your life that's getting in the way, instead of allowing them to be there for the reasons that actually serve you. Because there are no accidents, and they're in your life for a reason, but they're in your life to teach you lessons. And one of the lessons is to not impose a societal assumption or structure on what a relationship is just because of the strength of the attraction. It's about the idea of what are you learning from that relationship that allows you to become more of who you are and choose the things that you really prefer vibrationally in your life, instead of just insisting that this thing that has been attracted is supposed to serve a certain purpose, instead of just simply learning the lesson that it may be showing you that you need to let it go in order to attract something else that would actually be more relevant for you. So it all serves a purpose, but the question is, are you learning the lessons from what that relationship is showing you, or are you continuing to insist that it should be something that it's not?
Ilya Ovna Bashar.
Good day, good day.
Thank you for being the loving reflection that you are, by the way.
It is our passion and our pleasure.
I recently came to have some validation that I have a connection to the hybrid program.
All right.
And I've made agreements with certain mantis beings. There was a symbol that came through about phoning home, and I was hoping you could add some light to this.
Phoning home.
Yes.
All right. Well, first and foremost, when you are dealing with the mantis beings, with the grays, with the hybridization program, you are usually experiencing a shift in your energy vibration that is closer to the idea of spirit. And spirit represents your true home. So it could simply be your interpretation of realizing that you were very close to home, vibrationally speaking, anytime you had any of those encounters.
Okay. Did I make a agreement to do any channeling for one of these beings?
Do you mean with one of those beings, channeling one of them?
Yes.
It is a probability that you can pursue if you wish.
Could you give me a name or permission slip to follow that pathway?
Well, are you first of all talking about being excited about vocal channeling or automatic writing or doing some kind of readings for people or divination systems? What style of channeling? Because remember, anyone that is doing what they love to do is in the channeling state. They can decide how they wish to express it. That's up to them. So what form of channeling are you most passionate about exploring?
I think I'm still trying to decide that, but right now I'm leaning towards the vocal side.
All right. Well, are you willing to gather people around you who are asking questions so that they can pull the information through you?
Yes, absolutely.
All right. Well, then we would suggest that you do that. But you have to get out of your own way. You have to not care what comes through. It has to be all right if you get nothing at all. You can't be worried about looking strange or silly. You have to allow the information to come through by having people ask questions that pulls the information through you into them, so that you can just be the conduit and the vessel, and you don't have to think about what you're getting. So it's a relaxed state of just allowance of whatever happens to happen, knowing that at that moment, even though you will get better with practice, that whatever happens in the moment is what needs to happen to give you the opportunity to practice and to feel out how the information comes through you and what your particular style is all about. So if you're willing to start that way, then gather some people who are willing to help you practice by asking questions that they would really like to know the answers to, and see what happens.
Okay.
All right?
So further on that, during the same time when I got the symbol, I also got information about following patterns of cubes. And you mentioned something about how a cube symbolically is kind of grounding into physical reality. Is there any
Yes.
information you have about how that might connect to block DNA?
How it might connect to block DNA?
Yes.
Why do you think that the cubes block DNA?
Not block as in do not allow to proceed forward, but block is in term of a cube as a shape, I guess.
All right. Well, it's simply, again, symbolic of the idea of physical reality in a grounded sense. That's why people instinctively refer to your planet as the four corners of the world. They think of it in a cubic form because that represents the idea of a very solid, stable, grounded shape. It's symbolic in that sense of a full experience in physical reality. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think so. Separate question. So I've recently come across some information about uh, Tigetans. Is there anything you can add to the conversation about that at this time?
We are not allowed to discuss that at this time through this particular terminal.
Okay. Separate question then. So nature of physics. So when we transition and our universe essentially turns into spirit and less crystallized in physical reality, what happens to that physical reality that was our universe?
It remains within your soul. It remains within the oversoul. It becomes information that allows the soul to grow and make decisions about what it would like to do next. It's rendered into information, basically.
Okay. So concepts such as life insurance is useful for those who have perception agreements with us who also agree to that. But in terms of our physical reality, that's becomes information.
Yes, it all turns into information that the soul can use to decide what lessons to have learned from it, from the experience, how it all factors into what the soul will decide to do next for its personal growth.
Okay. If because we are shifting realities, one of the things I wish to do is honor all the life that I encounter. So when I'm in a situation for like weeding a garden, I
Yes.
don't want to harm those second density life forms, but I recognize that I shift to an earth where they're already different, but still I express the action of, well, I caused harm in the sense of my continuity. Can you help me address that perspective?
Well, you must understand the idea that in nature, certain things sometimes do go through a cycle where they do disintegrate in order to reform. So if you do it out of respect, out of love, and fall into a natural flow of your relationship and your connection to nature, then you will find ways to do that that actually are in keeping and in alignment with the natural cycles of nature for things to be apparently destroyed so they can be recreated. It's what you simply refer to as the cycle of physical reality, the cycle of life.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah.
All right.
And then I guess lastly, is there any other information that is open to coming through at this time?
When you start practicing the idea of channeling, make sure you allow yourself to adapt and to change in whatever way, shape, or form it seems natural for you to do so. Do not become rigid in the way that you think it has to present itself. You may at first start with your own higher mind, bringing that through so you can gain familiarity with what that feels like. And then you may start being aware of connections that you may have to other beings, like the mantis, where you then can, with further practice, bring through information from beings on that level as well.
Excellent. Thank you, Bashar. Ilya Ave.
You're welcome. Aveo.
There.
Hey Bashar, I hope you're having a blessed day. My name is Alexander. Pleasure to meet you. I've had this weird experience that I now have been learning from one of my guides and teachers that they believe that I met my past incarnation in this life, and it caused me to experience a massive expansion in consciousness as a result. And now I look back at my life, I look back at experiences, and like I don't remember them the same anymore. And because when I bounce them off people like family members, they're telling me a different experience that I remember, and it's making me feel like I'm going crazy. But my question is, I've been having these high rises of consciousness where I'm super present, super aware, super there, and then it just drifts away, and then I become like unconscious again. And I wonder how your species, how your kind has dealt with this while they've been like let's say you're born, as a different species, another race, wherever, and your kind is more evolved than our kind. So how would you guys have been teaching your younger species how to deal with the waves of coming and going of presence? I'd really like a tool for that, if that's okay.
Well, first of all, the idea is that you're opening up to being able to experience the concept of parallel realities more concretely, because past isn't really past, it's just another parallel reality that exists simultaneously with what you consider your present focus to be. So the idea is that you're opening up to being able to experience parallel realities. You'll get used to it. Don't worry about it. Move forward in your life by following the formula. Synchronicity will start arranging things in a way that will make sense in terms of what it is you're tapping into in a parallel reality and how you can use the information that you're tapping into to download it in a way you can apply it in your present life, in your present focus, in a way that benefits you. But you have to be okay with understanding that as you expand your consciousness, you're going to suddenly be aware of all sorts of parallel realities that you're connecting to because you are a greater being that covers more than one reality. So it's just part of the symptoms of expanding your consciousness in this day and age. Allow yourself to follow the formula to allow synchronicity to organize this in a way that you can use it in a practical sense in your physical incarnational experience.
Good day, Bashar. Very excited to meet with you. I'm very grateful for this opportunity.
It is our passion and our pleasure to interact with you as well. What would you like to discuss?
Well, there are several things. Obviously, first of all, you and I seem to have a similar sense of humor, and I have wondered what role a sense of humor has in the achieving and maintaining a higher vibrational state.
Well, humor is a higher vibrational state because humor fundamentally is an ability to form unexpected associations, unexpected connections to things that people might not ordinarily make connections to. So it is an expansion of your ability to holographically see how things are more connected and to express those connections in what might be considered an unusual way that opens people up to different perspectives.
Very good. I just know that you and I are very similar in that sense. I almost feel like we have met sometime in the past or have
Well,
existed.
you do have connections to our general frequency, and therefore it feels familiar to you. Yes.
Yes. Yes. All right. Secondly,
Yes.
one of my higher flow states that I achieve has been in sports, in participating in sports.
All right.
Do the Essassani have anything equivalent to that?
Well, yes, we have games, and you might call them sports, but it's not in competition with each other. It's in competition with ourselves.
Okay. Well, yes, that's pretty much my attitude. I do like to quote to win or be victorious, but at the same time, I'm more concerned about how well I perform to a level that I think I should be.
Yes, and in that context, everything that we experience is a win. There is no winning and losing in our society. There is, what did you learn in that experience? And if you learned something and you grew, that's a win. So even though there may be collective involvement, we're all there synchronistically to allow each other to experience our own individual wins, our individual growth in how we experience that particular exercise.
Okay. Delving into extraterrestrial races, if that's okay.
Yes.
Are there any that are actually genetically equivalent to humans on Earth?
Well, very much closely genetically connected, like the Pleiadians, who are in a sense your distant cousins. Right. So like that, yes, there are genetic connections between humans on Earth and different species. But after a point, it becomes very, very different, and many alien societies look nothing like you. But there are several that do, primarily not only just because of the morphogenetic fields that say this is a efficient form, so they look humanoid or human-like, even though they may not necessarily be directly genetically connected to you in the way that you think, but there are some that are actually truly genetically family.
Right. Okay. So they
such as us.
Have they populated the Earth at some point?
There have been times in the past where other societies have taken advantage of the Earth environment for a period of time. Yes.
Okay. All right.
It's part of the history that you don't know.
Right. Okay. And that will be revealed at some point?
Eventually, yes, after open contact.
Okay. Something I wonder about you specifically, how much do these sessions deplete you, or do they deplete you in any way?
No, of course not. Why would they deplete me? Why would I do it if they did?
Well, as a first contact specialist, that being your desired role,
yes,
that doesn't necessarily mean it wouldn't necessarily have some impact on you per se, I guess.
Well, the impact it has is that it energizes us.
Okay.
It is what we love to do. And therefore, we are operating at a very high frequency, and at a high frequency, we are energized. It never depletes us because we are simply being a conduit for a higher frequency, passing through us, leaving us with energy. It doesn't take energy away from us. It supports us with a higher frequency energy.
Yes, I know. Well, I'm feeling energized just in this little discussion. So I can imagine, I guess, that it has quite an impact on you in that case.
Yes.
I think that's going to be it.
All right.
I definitely appreciate your time and your dedication.
Again, the dedication is automatic when you are focused on what you love to do. So, we thank you. Aveo.
Aveo.
Good day.
Good day.
Hi Bashar, Alicia here. I wanted to speak about an experience I had maybe 6 years ago relative to our time. And the experience is with Source itself, all that is. And I would describe it as very similar to the sun, but a white ball of energy. And I could imagine, I can still feel it almost being hit with, just fire. I felt like I was being burnt, but I knew it was unconditional love and acceptance. And I remember floating and, just telepathically speaking with Source. And not too long after that, I ended up just shutting the door, shutting off all from metaphysics, quantum mechanics, spirituality, and I just closed it off. And I want to understand why Source decided that would be the opportune moment for me to experience itself, and why, knowing that after experiencing, I would shut it off and completely close that door. And I want to understand what my purpose is, because I still am wanting to understand. And I feel like there's a block that is preventing me from doing so after already knowing and being exposed to a multitude of truths and itself.
Well, you were shown what you actually are, that you are Source, you come from Source. You are given the vibration to reach for through the challenges in your life. So you shut down the direct connection so that you could climb the ladder by going through and facing the challenges that would ultimately bring you back to being able to connect to that frequency again. But you were given the opportunity to know exactly what that frequency feels like, so that you have something to aim for and understand that that's where the challenges that you choose to transform in positive ways will ultimately take you if you keep transforming those challenges. Good day.
Thank you so much for this interaction, Bashar.
It is our passion and our pleasure.
So you've described both the physical body and the personality structure as being the prism through which our pure consciousness is filtered in order to create our physical reality experience.
Yes.
I was wondering, what is the difference then between the personality structure and the physical body?
Well, the personality structure is what determines what the physical body is going to be in terms of how it arranges its DNA components when it is laid out on the blueprint level. Does that make sense? Do you understand?
So the personality structure, the beliefs, thoughts, and emotions do that?
Yes, it's all woven into the structure of the genetics that will reinforce the belief system that is germane for that personality structure to have in order to face the challenges that the soul chose to face in that physical experience. So when the body is being formed, shall we say, when it's being patterned, when it is about to be born physically, the vibrations structure the DNA to structure the body, to incorporate the belief systems within that genetic structure, to incorporate it within the personality structure, so that that body will express itself, that personality will express itself in the way that is necessary for it to face the challenges it chose to face for the soul's growth. Does that make sense?
Yes. To some degree, it makes sense. I will need to absorb it a little more, but
All right.
so all of those. So it sounds like the beliefs part of the personality structure comes before anything else.
In the forming of the personality, yes, the belief systems have to be there. Now, there is some looseness to it at the beginning, and the looseness is crystallized and solidified over a brief period of time, over a few years, when the belief system is also willing to absorb belief systems from its surroundings, from its parents, its schooling, its society, so on and so forth, to complete the picture that that personality needs in order to face the challenges in the way it needs to face those challenges, to learn, to grow, and to have the experience it chose to have. So the genetics are arranged with some structure, but also arranged to allow for some belief systems from its environment to come in to complete the structure that it will then face as a physical persona growing up.
Okay, and so that's almost set in stone after a certain age?
Yes, somewhere around 7 years of age, 9 years of age, it becomes more crystallized, and now you are on the momentum, you're on the path of experiencing the challenges you chose to experience for your soul's growth.
Okay, but we're still able to change our beliefs. We've been told that we can.
But that's part of the process of the soul growing, is to learn how to do that.
Okay.
That's what you set yourself up to do. I'm going to impose these particular belief systems that I will have the opportunity to change. It is that process of change that allows the soul to discover something new and to grow. So you set yourself up with things that ideally you will be able to change.
I see. Thank you.
Yes.
All right. The next question I have is about as above, so below.
Yes.
You say everything in physical reality has a spirit version of itself.
First, yes.
Okay.
So in a sense, it's really more like anything in spirit has potentially a physical version if relevant. There are more things in spirit than there are on earth. As is in your text, there are more things in heaven than you imagine in your philosophy. So there are more things in spirit than you experience on earth, because not everything is relevant to experience in the physical way. But everything that is physical has a component in spirit first.
Okay. How would something like a disease that is in physical reality that we see the symptoms of, how would that look in spirit, for example?
As a pattern of energy that is, from your perspective, potentially discordant.
Okay, so there can be discordant things in spirit, anything.
Well, let me put it this way. It's like a blueprint. I'm going to have this experience of this disease, which is something that is representative of being out of balance with my core frequency. So as a blueprint, you may see it as something that looks like it's slightly shifted off of the center core essential frequency in a way that would cause a discordant harmonic between the two. Just to put it in energy terms.
Okay. Makes sense. All right. Now I have some questions about the social experiment.
Yes.
Now for the letter we sent out, it was
Yeah.
it was signed the Interstellar Alliance Social Experiment Group.
Yes.
And I'm a member of that. I've been doing the steps,
All
but
right.
I didn't consciously write the letter. I was just wondering who actually wrote it, and how did you use our consciousnesses in writing
In
it?
exactly the same way that you are experiencing conversation with us now. We downloaded it to the channel, who then translated it into words on his computer.
Okay. So it's a reflection of our collective higher mind. The
Always.
letter. Mm-hmm. Okay. And that's, I guess, how all the social experiment steps were created as well.
Yes. But it's also a reflection of something that allows us to observe the reactions of individuals who choose to participate.
Now, what will happen if people want to embellish the ID cards? Or
The degree to which that might be done, even though we are suggesting that it may not necessarily be done, will again tell us something about the way people perceive things, how they approach things, how they interact with things. And that's part of the reason for this social experiment, is not only for you to utilize these things to your own effect and your own advantage, but for us to observe what happens when you do them, when you align with it, or when you do something different than we suggested.
Okay. On that same general theme, I sent a letter out to one of my senators, and he suggested that I call someone who works under him, who's in charge of the space aspect of his work, I guess, and to talk about this subject with him. And I felt
All right.
excited to do that, but then I thought maybe this is going out of the bounds of the social experiment since it was connected to the letter. Do you have any guidance on that?
You may have a conversation. It depends on what the subject is. But again, you can also turn them on to the idea of the origin of that letter and let them discover things for themselves. But it's all right to have a conversation about subjects that are similar to what is covered in the letter.
Okay.
All we are basically saying is you don't necessarily have to explain what the social experiment is to them, but you can certainly discuss subjects that are contained within the idea of the social experiment, like the existence of extraterrestrial beings and the desire for disclosure and things like that.
Okay. And I can refer them to bashar.org for the
If they
official.
wish to understand the actual parameters involved in the social experiment, yes, that you don't have to explain. They can find that out for themselves. But you can certainly have discussions about subjects that are peripheral to what the letter is about.
Okay. What does a white flower symbolize to the collective consciousness of the Interstellar Alliance?
The opening of consciousness to higher vibrations, to higher light.
Okay. All right. Well, I thank you very much. I love you very much. And thank you so much for this interaction.
Our unconditional love to you as well. Aveo. Good day.
Okay.
Hello, Bashar and Darryl. My name is Medina. So my question is, I'm really curious what happens to children during this transformation. How are they handling this? What's happening during this shifting to this fifth dimensional Earth? Are they automatically shifting, or do they need to also work on themselves to get into higher frequency? Are they naturally in high frequency? I have two boys, 12 and 8, and I would love for us to be on the same frequency, and I always think about it. Even though I work on myself, my husband works on himself, and we try to help them as well, but they are kids. So please let me know everything is okay. Thank you.
Everything is okay. That's really all you need to focus on. Everyone has their own path. You will always all be together at some point, whether it's physically or not. You're going to a fourth density Earth. Fifth density is non-physical. You're tapping into fifth density energy to imbue it in your third density body so that you can experience a fourth density physical reality. Kids are very intuitive. They're very still connected more than a lot of adults to the idea of spirit. But of course, it's all about what path they have chosen, what themes they are exploring, and what they're picking up from the adults in their society as to how they are capable or not of dealing with what they face in life. So the more you are willing to be creative and imaginative, allowing them to discover for themselves their self-empowerment, what their passion is all about, to learn the things they need to learn to thrive in physical reality by adopting their excitement to those lessons, rather than diminishing their excitement to learn those things, then ultimately you will have to know that they will be okay. And when and where it is important and relevant for you to be together, you will be together. So we would simply suggest that you don't worry about it, because that's a negative vibration that will actually cause things to take longer for you to experience the idea of the connection between all of you and your family. But you will always be members of a soul family, no matter how or where or when you experience that. So ultimately, everything is okay. start relaxing into the flow of the way things unfold, do not worry negatively so much about where they're going to wind up. They are infinite and indestructible spirits, just like you are, even though they may present themselves as physical children right now. So you have to see them for the spirits that they are and the journeys that they chose to experience for their own soul's growth. You have to see them as strong enough to handle anything, even though it may seem from time to time that their physical personalities may be a little lost or confused or uncertain. It's okay. It's part of the process of them allowing themselves to remember who they truly are. And as long as you are lovingly reminding them of that, especially by being a living example of who you are, then they'll take their cue from you when and where it's relevant for them to do so. So again, don't worry. Everything is okay.
Hello, Bashar and Company. My question is in regards to planet that has been dubbed K2-18b. I was just wondering if you'd be able to tell us anything about this planet. It's been speculated that it's a gas planet or that it's a ocean planet. It's also apparently the James Webb Space Telescope has found evidence of carbon dioxide and methane, which is indicative of life, at least as far as we know it. So I was just wondering if you could verify any of this or what you could tell us about this planet that would be of interest to us, and including maybe whether we will be visiting it anytime in my lifetime. Thank you. Have a great day. Bye.
You will not visit the planet in your lifetime physically. You can certainly visit it astrally. There is life there, is an aquatic form of life. Eventually you will realize that, but not for many years.
Hello, dear Bashar.
Good day.
My question, can you hear me?
Yes.
My question today is about the Tucson, Arizona portals. Some friends took me we hiked to a portal. It was a very large saguaro cactus, and we stood under it, and it had the most incredible loving feeling that I've ever felt. My friend channeled 2 Andromedans while we were there that said that they were very happy that we were there and that they liked it when people came to see them. And I really want to go back there a lot.
Aww.
Then that same day we went on Mount Lemon, and we went to the Hoodoos, where there was a huge, she said it's a massive portal where lots of ships, different ships and races go in and out all the time. It was very chaotic and loud and very, very noisy. So my question to you is, do you agree that those are portals? I mean, what I felt was real.
Yes. The idea is most people don't understand that from a certain point of view, your world is like Swiss cheese. There's holes everywhere. There's comings and goings everywhere. There are portals, some of them stronger, some of them weaker, but there are portals everywhere connecting you to different dimensions that are often used by higher frequency beings to travel and to connect to those different dimensions, or to pass through from one dimension to another, maybe simply using your portal as a transition point. So your world is very much like full of holes.
Oh, that's wonderful. A quick question more, and my last one is that many years ago I had a past life regression or a soul retrieval or something, I don't remember, with a lady, and deep sleep, whatever, I was in a trance or whatever. She told me that my mother, after it was over, she told me that my mother was an earth angel. My mother's passed away in 2005. And that my mother preferred the life that she once had, where she was a woman called a nail. And she had long, dark hair, which my mother did not in real life. Yeah. And she told me that she would always be with me, and that if I ever needed her, I have this blanket. She explained this blanket that I still have, and that I could just get that blanket and put it on me, and she would be there, or I didn't even need to put the blanket on. Yeah. So is my mother always going to be an earth angel like that, hovering around the earth?
Well, you understand that the term angel doesn't mean she's actually literally from the angelic realm. It just means that she is of a vibration where she is willing to be of assistance, to be a guide, to assist and help wherever she is needed, and that she prefers that state of being. She prefers that representation because that to her feels more like her true self. It feels more like home. So, yes, of course. Now, beings on the other side have their own lives. They're not just hanging around waiting for you, but they will be there when you need them because time for them is not what it is for you. And as soon as you truly need them, they can be there instantaneously. And they're always willing to do so because they are full of unconditional love for you.
Will she always be that kind of person on the other side, or will she eventually move on to do something else?
Everyone moves on, but that doesn't mean you still can't access that part of her because that always exists as a part of her greater being. It just depends on what her focus is on her journey for herself, but that doesn't mean that those parts within them are not always available to those that need them, because that's what it means to be a greater being, is you are many things to many people, and each individual can call upon the aspect of the greater being that they are familiar with, that they may need assistance from.
Okay, thank you so much. I love you so much, and thank you for this interaction today.
You are welcome. Our unconditional love to you as well. Good day.
Good day. Aveo.
Aveo.
Hi, Bashar. This is a question to a dream I had the other day. I was in this room I often go to, and together was my brother. And in the room there was these white tulips that I was being told that if I wanted to have a higher and deeper connection to you, I could eat one of them or more. I ate 3 or 4 and thinking these white tulips are a little bit too unreal to be real. I remember the taste of them and eating them. You were very present in the room the whole time. There was also a woman there observing the action of my brother and me, and she asked me why we did so. And I asked and explained to her. And then she said, if you really want to have this connection, I have the real one. And she gave me one flower. And I observed it. And the flower head of the white tulips, I could see all the pattern, like if I saw it under a microscope, holding it in my hands. Those white fluorescent colors going through the pattern of the flower. I ate it. It was very different taste. And I want to ask you, do you have any connection to the white tulips? And what would this dream mean to you? Thank you.
This is, in some sense, what we just talked about in terms of the symbol of a white flower, meaning that it is a permission slip symbolically presented in the form of a flower, energetically speaking, that allows you to open up to higher frequencies of consciousness, to open up to the light, the higher light. So it is a kind of energetic astral tool that is presented in a way that you understand as a life form, the flower, that allows, when you absorb it, things to open up within your consciousness as a flower opens to the light, but the different flavors represent opening up to different things, different energies, different frequencies, different realities. So that's basically what it represents as an astral experience that you had using those symbols that are representative of different forms of life on our planet and other planets and other dimensions, such as flowers, but they have that symbolic, energetic meaning as a permission slip. And therefore, ingesting them in the way that you did as an astral being allows your energy to open up to higher light, to experience more connections to more dimensions of reality.
Hello, Tadeo.
Nania.
We have so many wonderful questions from our viewers today.
All right.
The first one is, you talk about how similar to when we wake up from a dream while we're asleep in physical reality, it is that when we die, we wake up from the physical back into who we are as a soul. From your perspective, does this process continue beyond that once we are awake as a soul, or are we totally awake? Do we wake up at some point from being a soul back to being an oversoul, or from an oversoul, and so on? How does it all work?
When you are a soul, you are totally awake as a soul. You can connect to the oversoul. You can start to experience points of view from the oversoul. The idea is not so much that you wake up as the oversoul, for both will exist simultaneously in the realm of spirit, in the realm of non-physical reality. But you can have experiences as if you are seeing from the oversoul perspective. You can have experiences as if you are seeing from higher perspectives, oversouls of oversouls, and even from the perspective of all that is. But it's not the same as waking up, because you haven't forgotten who you are. Exactly in the sense of the connection between soul, oversoul, oversouls of oversouls, and all that is. On that level, things start to exist more concretely in a simultaneous way, and you can have experiences of having the point of view and perspective of those other levels, but it's not the same as waking up to realize you are that.
Okay, and what happens to the soul when we physically die?
What do you mean? You become the soul. You are the soul. You wake up as the soul. Your body idea, your experience of physical reality remains within you as the soul. Remember, your body doesn't have a soul. Your soul has a body. So to ask what happens to the soul when we die is a question coming from the linear physical perspective, as if your body is, in a sense, more real than the soul. You are a soul, and when you die, in a sense, you absorb the experience you had within the soul of the physical being that you created within the soul. Again, similar to the idea of as you grow as an adult, you absorb the experience you had as a child. But you are now an adult. Yet you can call upon the experiences you've had as a child. So as a soul, you can call upon the experiences you had from the physical perspective, but all that happened within the soul.
Okay, and if we are all living past and future lives in the present moment, then why is it that when babies are born, they need to relearn how to be human? They need to relearn the simplest things like how to talk, count, and interact with people. It is like they are discovering the world for the first time, but it's not the first time because we have many lives before and after.
But it is the first time for that personality. Your sentence is mixing the idea of the physical persona and the soul's experience when you say we. So the idea is you are creating a new physical persona that is injecting itself into the experience of physical reality and choosing to forget who it is so it can rediscover who it is from a new point of view. So it is the first time for that personality, and there has to be that first time experience for that personality to absorb all of the belief systems that are representative of the challenges that the soul chose to face as that unique new personality from a linear perspective. So that's why you have to forget who you are as a soul, even though you may be able to access all sorts of incarnational experiences that coexist simultaneously from the soul perspective. From the physical perspective, this is you uniquely for the first time. And therefore you have to learn things in the way that it is relevant for that personality to learn how to talk and walk and reconnect to things in a way, or connect to things in a way for the first time, to satisfy what that physical personality's journey is all about, which is going to be completely different from any other personality's journey. So it has to build up from scratch.
And how can a person tell if it's their last lifetime on Earth?
You will make that decision when you are in spirit. You cannot necessarily know that decision now. You may feel that there is a good chance you might choose that when you are back in spirit, back as the soul. And therefore, as the soul, you may say, yes, that was it. And now I'm going to move on. But you will have discussions with your spirit guides and all sorts of other beings when you are in spirit. And really, you will not completely form that decision until you are in spirit. You don't know right now, from the physical perspective, what else the soul itself may choose to experience. So you have many choices, and yes, you don't have to reincarnate, so to speak, on Earth. You can choose other kinds of experiences. But again, you will make that decision when you are in spirit.
And does each oversoul have a higher mind similar to our individual higher mind? And is the higher mind of all oversouls God?
In a sense, yes. The higher mind of anything and everything is what you call God. Although, again, it's infinite and eternal, there is no end, and even the idea of all that is can have a higher mind of a multitude of all that is.
And is our soul our higher mind?
Yes, same thing. The soul is the higher mind because that is the portion that is still experiencing itself as spirit, as a soul. So that becomes the higher mind, the guide for the physical personality the soul has created within the center of its being.
And do animals have higher minds?
Yes, because animals have souls, and the soul is the higher mind.
How is an animal soul different from a human soul?
It's different in purpose, it's different in vibrational frequency, it's different in intention, it's different in focus. The energy is the same, the essence is the same, but the vibrational patterns that determine what it is are different. It's like saying electromagnetic energy, light, is light. Whether it's visible light, invisible light, red, green, yellow, blue, whatever. It's all made of the same stuff, so to speak. But the different frequencies determine that it appears and presents itself as different in terms of its effect. So animal souls, human souls, all souls are in a sense made of the same stuff, the same energy, the same consciousness, the same extension of source, and all that is. But the frequencies that determine it is an animal as opposed to a human are different. It's a different color, so to speak.
Can animals become humans or vice versa after they die and return to the physical world?
There is a type of progression where, from your perspective, it can appear that an animal consciousness has evolved into expressing itself as something like a human consciousness. It is unlikely that human consciousness become animal consciousness in an incarnational sense. Human consciousness can perceive itself and experience itself as an animal consciousness, but not necessarily physiologically. It is something that happens on the spirit level, in the spirit realm, in a certain way that you can experience while you're physical, but it's not like you're actually incarnating as an animal physically.
And are there an infinite number of souls to match one for each parallel human individual?
Yes.
And if we create vibrational representations of other souls' energy, but are not actually interacting with those energies directly in the material world, how is it possible that we can interact with anyone but ourselves?
Because you're picking up on the vibrational frequency of another, and you are using that frequency in part to create or co-create the version that you're interacting with, made out of your energy. So when you make a simulation of another being, part of that simulation contains the frequency differences in that other being, so that they do in fact appear different to you. The fact that you can perceive them as a different person is the clue that you are utilizing some of their frequency to create that representation, even though you're creating it out of your own consciousness and out of your own energy in order to have something to interact with. So the differences, the fact that you see it as a different person, is representative that you are incorporating into that simulation some of their frequency to represent themselves that way.
Is it possible to fully experience ourselves as our higher selves?
Yes, when you die. But you can have a version of yourself by getting very close to the idea, in the same way we have expressed that we are quasi-physical. On the chart that we have given you for this particular transmission, you will see the idea on the right-hand side of the fourth density human, where the physical mind has expanded back closer to being the level of the soul. And then you see above that the version that represents non-physical reality experience as an astral form or a near-death experience form. We are in the middle between those two, where we are very close to the idea of being the astral form, the spirit form, but we still retain physical attributes. That's why we are quasi-physical. So we represent as best as possible the idea of our higher minds, the soul, in physical terms by being quasi-physical, by having attributes of both the soul level and the physical level in a balanced and blended way. That's how you do it. It's not exactly the identical experience of being the soul, but it is a very close representation while still experiencing yourself to some degree as physical.
And can soul fragments from the same higher self or oversoul be family members? For example, can cousins be soul fragments from the same higher self?
There's no such thing as soul fragments. There are souls. If you're calling a fragment one of the souls that is connected to an oversoul, well, all right, then we understand your terminology. But there are no soul fragments. Souls are whole beings.
Okay, and is it true that twins have the same oversoul?
They can. They don't have to, but they can. It may be very likely, but it doesn't have to be absolute.
In the case of identical versus fraternal, is there any difference regarding oversoul connection?
It is more likely that identical might be extensions of the same oversoul. Again, it's not an absolute. And it might be more likely that twins that are only fraternal and not identical might still be extensions of the same oversoul, or more likely extensions of different oversouls for different reasons. But again, you have to take it on a case-by-case basis. Both are possible, but it's not an absolute. It depends on the purpose for the creation of the reflection of the twin or the triplet or what have you.
So I'm coming back to the idea of soul fragments. So there is no such thing as a soul fragment?
No. If you're referring to a soul fragment as simply one of the souls that make up an oversoul, then again, we understand the way you're using that terminology. But there is no such thing, aside from that expression, as a soul fragment. Souls are whole beings. There is no fragment of a soul.
Okay. And if this person's saying they know they're a soul with a body, but is it possible for an oversoul to have many different bodies?
Well, yes, that's exactly what an oversoul does. An oversoul has many different souls, and each soul can have an incarnational physical experience or a body. That's exactly the description of the idea of how the oversoul experiences itself, because many of the souls that make it up may choose to have incarnations in different places and different times, and all of that experience as physical beings feeds back through the soul to the oversoul that is having all those experiences at the same time.
And this person would love to know what determines the oversoul group that we end up being in. Also, once an oversoul group, is manifest, do we remain in that group permanently?
Yes. You don't end up being in an oversoul. You start out that way. That's who you are. You're part of that vibration. You're part of that larger aspect of all that is. And then as an individual soul, you are an extension of that oversoul. That's who you are. You don't end up being there.
And how common is it for people with the same oversoul to meet in the same lifetime?
It's quite common. There can be many counterparts that will cross paths with each other, maybe interact with each other in a variety of different ways. Again, it depends upon the purpose for such an interaction. So I'm not saying it happens all the time, but it's quite common.
And how do you explain the concept of souls parallel life experiences impacting our current life journey? And what implications does this have on the infinite potential of our souls?
Well, again, this is what we've talked about many times when you talk about the idea of incarnations, past, present, future, where you're making cross connections energetically, informationally, sharing that information between different experiences that all coexist simultaneously, whether they seem to be in your historical timeline or in a parallel reality, doesn't matter. You connect to what you need to connect to draw information and experience from what serves your particular life path. So you're always plugging into and unplugging from different experiences in parallel realities to inform your life path, as other beings are doing for you. Plugging into you to draw down your experience and information into them to help them with their life path, because it's just like one giant dynamic interactive internet. You're constantly sending and receiving information to different versions of extensions of different souls and parallel realities and what have you, in order to inform your path while you help others inform their path.
And does the higher mind or soul take feedback from the physical mind or the personality? For example, if someone is done and they've changed their mind about exploring something because it's actually more painful than they anticipated, can they terminate the agreement? And how can they do that?
No, you cannot terminate an agreement. You can postpone it, you can delay it, you cannot terminate it. An agreement is something that, in a sense, is part of your experience as a soul, that makes you unique, that makes you what you are. So when you have set up within yourself the parameters that allow you to experience parts of who you are, you cannot terminate that, because it would be like terminating a part of yourself, and you can't do that ultimately. You can postpone it. You can decide to leave physical reality before your prescribed time, the time that you originally set up, your end point, your exit point, because that's what you call suicide, when you leave early. But then you realize, when you go back into the soul form, that you were not finished with the agreement you made to be you in that way, to learn that thing that actually allows you to grow as a soul, as the soul you are, the unique soul you are. So you cannot change that. So you will perhaps postpone it. You may linger for a while and experience different things as a soul, non-physically, but then you will realize that in order to progress, in order to move forward, in order to grow, in order to change, you will, in some way, shape, or form, need to fulfill the parameters of that agreement, or you will not move forward. And not moving forward and not growing will at some point be such a strong and powerful urge within you, because of the nature of existence to expand, that you will finally decide in some way, shape, or form to continue to fulfill that agreement until you fulfill it. So you cannot erase it, but you can postpone it.
And since we have a body within our consciousness, is everything around you or me my consciousness? Is this an independent experience with the other being me too? Or my version of them?
Well, yes, your version of them. Your version of them.
says, how far around me does my consciousness expand?
All your consciousness around you, that's what you experience. We use the analogy of the idea of projecting onto the inner surface of the soul that you're within, because your physical mind is within the soul. So if you imagine the soul as a sphere of energy that has an inner surface and you're at the center of it, then you project like a screen. This is just a euphemism, it's just a metaphor. You project the idea on the inner surface of the sphere that you are at the center of, so your consciousness, your reflection of physical reality, is all around you. That's all you experience. But that means you're experiencing your version of other beings, other souls, who are experiencing you as their version of you projected on the inner surface of their soul sphere, so to speak. This is just a crude, simplistic analogy. But again, it doesn't mean you're not interacting with other beings. That takes place on a different level. But you're creating, as a physical mind, all of those interactions out of your own energy, because you are at the center of your soul sphere, projecting it on the inner surface of that sphere, euphemistically speaking.
It's interesting because what you've described is very similar to what a person experiences inside of the sphere in Las Vegas.
Yes. That's why, again, you create these things to represent what's actually going on in reality, and your culture chooses to create representations of that idea. As you open your consciousness up, it's reflected in your technology all the time, in your culture, in your stories, so on and so forth.
Fascinating.
Yes.
Is it correct that some souls incarnate on Earth compulsorily? And how does this come to be specifically? How does free will relate to this?
You always have free will as a soul. It's not compulsive. You choose to incarnate. Now, you may feel as a soul, so to speak, that it's important for you to do so. And if you want to call that a compulsion because you know that that's going to really help your soul grow and you are really driven to do that, well, fine. Then that can be, in a sense, a compulsion. But it's not something that is compulsive. You have a choice.
Can entities interfere with the communication between the triad mind? And if so, what are some of the common reasons why this interference takes place?
No, there's no such thing as that kind of interference in the way that you mean it. Again, you can choose to change your vibrational frequency to match frequencies of other beings, and in that way you're influencing yourself in a way that makes it appear as if it might be coming from another being, but it's your own energy at a certain frequency that is experienced as interference, but it's not actually possible for another entity to interfere.
Okay, and this person is asking, how can I become an oversoul if I'm an individual soul now?
You can't. You are an individual soul. You are part of an oversoul. Again, in spirit, you can have the experience of perceiving yourself as an oversoul, but the oversoul exists at the same time that your soul does. So you don't become an oversoul. You simply have the ability to experience yourself from the oversoul perspective as a soul.
Okay. And this person is saying that they believe that nothing can affect them in a negative way unless they are a match to that energy. Is that a true belief?
Yes. If you actually believe it, you know it, you understand it. That's the way things work. Nothing can affect you that you don't choose to be affected by. And that's why it's so important to get into touch with the beliefs about why you believe it might be necessary to change your frequency to make it appear as if you're being affected negatively by something else.
And does that sort of relate to the question the individual had about changing their life theme that they were experiencing in a painful way because they decided that the path they had chosen for this life was too painful? Is that also an answer to that issue of
Yes.
experiencing life in a painful way, wanting to
Yes.
escape it.
Yes. Now
And-
remember, remember, the only reason life appears too painful is because of the belief systems you're holding on to that make it so. The journey, the path that every soul chooses is never actually too much to bear. It is something you have chosen for your soul's growth, to transform, to experience, to challenge yourself with. The only way it starts to appear to be too much to bear is because you're not allowing your belief system to align with your core frequency in a way that lets you know that you can handle the challenges you chose to face from the soul's perspective. So it is up to the physical mind and the belief system that makes up the physical mind to alter its beliefs in such a way as to experience that the challenges the soul chose are not something that is too much to bear. You can handle it if you align your beliefs to your core frequency. If you let go of those beliefs that are negative and fear-based, you will be a match for the soul's path that the soul chose. It only becomes overwhelming when you have beliefs that are contrary to your core frequency as a being, as a soul.
And this person wants to know if you think that any of us, or even just some of us, can accomplish the elevating or raising of our vibration that you so strongly advocate and suggest. What are your thoughts on our current procedure?
Yes, of course you can. Otherwise, it would be pointless for us to share this information with you. Therefore, we wouldn't do it. So the fact that we are sharing this information is a representation of the principle of the one-sided coin that we've talked about many times. It is our passion and our pleasure to share this information with you, which tells us that there are some individuals who are more than capable of receiving and absorbing and applying this information in a way that they can raise their vibration and have the experiences that we are talking about. Otherwise, it would be pointless for us to share this information. And we would then feel that it was pointless, know that it was pointless, and wouldn't share it. So the fact that we're sharing it should be your first clue that it is attainable. But it's up to you to attain it. You don't have to, but it is attainable. Otherwise, it wouldn't be given. So where are you at? Where you are at individually is up to you. Are you following the formula? Are you letting go of fear-based and negative beliefs, thus raising your vibration? You're the determiner of that. You're the determiner of where you're at. Obviously, enough of you are moving up, are raising your frequency in a way that allows us to see that we can continue to deliver new information, new perspectives, new insights, that we can continue to talk about the idea of the highest probability of open contact occurring in your lifetime very quickly. Otherwise, again, we would be talking about different things if we were talking to you at all. So you can use what we're sharing with you, the idea of the Interstellar Alliance social experiment, one example of that, showing you that you are progressing, or at least some of you are. So use what we're sharing with you as an indicator that you're progressing, if you are even aware of what we're sharing with you. Otherwise, you wouldn't be aware of it.
And since we cannot perceive what we are not the vibration of, how can we reach a person or entity with higher truths for help when we are in a very low state?
If you do reach the person, if you do reach the help, if you do match it, if you do have the ability to encounter it, then it means a part of the mix of your frequency contains the ability to do that, even though overall you might be functioning at a lower frequency. So you always contain the potential for that frequency to show itself and to access the information that you need. Remember that as physical beings, you are compartmentalized. in many ways in your consciousness. Therefore, that may mean that there are still parts of your consciousness that are capable of operating on a higher frequency, even though it may not be the majority of those parts of your consciousness, but sufficient enough to reach out for and receive the assistance that other beings of higher frequency are sending to you.
Okay, and how do you combine genuine service to others with our unchangeable motivational mechanism, i.e., the mechanism that says we will always do things that are move towards what's good for us and away from the things we perceive as being not good for us?
All right, well, that is not worded correctly. The motivational mechanism doesn't make you move toward things that are good for you. It makes you move toward things you believe are good for you. Big difference. Big difference. Belief is the key. So you may not move toward things that are good for you because you have a belief that the alternative is worse. So pay attention to the idea of how the motivational mechanism actually works. It doesn't make you move toward things that are good for you. It makes you move toward things you believe are good for you, which may not be the case. So you have to have real honesty within yourself about why you are choosing what you're choosing and whether you're really choosing it out of anxiety or excitement and covering up the anxiety with what seems to be excitement so you don't have to look at the anxiety, so that you don't have to face the idea that you may be holding on to a belief that choosing what is actually good for you would actually make something happen that is worse than what you're choosing now, even though it may not necessarily be in your best interest. So be clear in your understanding of how the motivational mechanism actually functions.
And so this person is mentioning that they think they understand the formula, but one part of it is still unclear. And that is, how does the formula tie in with good habits, discipline, and on a larger scale, routines, structures, jobs? Does following one's excitement mean disregarding all structures and routines? Is the formula inherently spontaneous and impulsive?
No. As I say, the formula contains the organizing principle of synchronicity. The organizing principle, that phrase alone implies structure. But it's the structure that works for you. It's the structure that allows you to flow. It's a structure, paradoxically, that allows for spontaneity. But it is still a pattern. It's still a structure. But it feels less like a structure because you're flowing within a structure that's natural for you. So you don't feel the resistances that often come with the artificial structures you impose on yourselves that are not natural for who you are. That's why it doesn't feel like a structure, because it's the structure that fits you.
Okay, thank you. And how do I find the purpose of my life? How do I find my excitement?
As I said, you can start small. The fact that you're asking that question is a representation that you have found your excitement for that moment, because obviously it was more exciting than any other choice to ask that question. So you can do the same thing in the next moment. What's the next thing that has a little bit more excitement, curiosity, attractiveness than any other choice? Start simply. Keep it simple. Again, when we talk about finding your passion and your excitement, we don't mean that you have to be jumping up and down and running around like crazy. It doesn't mean it has to come with trumpets and angels singing. It means, what's the next thing I have the ability to act on that has more attractiveness than any other choice? That's simple. Taking a walk, reading a book, eating a meal, talking to a friend, creating something, whatever it is, asking a question of someone like you just did, whatever it is that has more attractiveness, that feels like the next thing you really, really feel like doing, do it and keep doing that. It will build, it will snowball into other expressions of your excitement, as long as you keep checking yourself to make sure that you're actually acting on excitement and not acting on anxiety disguised as excitement.
And this idea of the end justifying the means, and that would be that it seems like the higher mind has an attitude of the ends justify the means. So for people with especially hard themes, that includes a total forgetting of any spiritual truths. What are your thoughts on this?
It's not that the higher mind has an end justifies the means position. That's a human interpretation. The idea is the soul understands what it's going to get out of the experience and is doing its job of guiding the physical mind within it in such a way as to send it the guidance it needs in order for the physical mind to have an experience that allows it to face challenges that are beneficial to it, to allow it to expand, to allow it to grow, to allow it to have a fulfilling and joyful life experience. The only reason it appears as if the end justifies the means is because of the perspective of the physical mind that is harboring and holding on to belief systems that are out of alignment with its core frequency. So, the idea that it seems too hard to bear, as we discussed already, comes from the linear perspective, not from the soul perspective. The soul is doing its best to send you messages of passion, but the physical mind has the ability and the free will to ignore it. And it is in ignoring that guidance from the soul that the physical mind then says, oh, this looks like the end justifies the means because I am being subjected to these horrible, torturous experiences, instead of allowing yourself to understand what we have shared with you about the formula that allows you to remain in a positive state no matter what happens, so you can always get a benefit from it. That's why that step is in there, so that you can understand how this works, so that you can experience a life of challenge in a positive way that allows you to expand and experience the benefits of facing those challenges, rather than feeling overwhelmed or feeling that the soul is somehow torturing you by putting you in a situation that's too much for you. It's not. You're putting yourself in the situation that makes it appear to be too much for you by not following the formula, by not opening up to the idea that challenges can be positive, by not feeling worthy, by forgetting who you are. That's what the soul may have chosen to start with, but it has always given you the opportunity to pay attention to what you can actually use to go through the experience from beginning to end that actually will help you learn and grow and experience a life of fulfillment and joy.
And when you see things on a screen, let's say that synchronistically are an important message, like from the lyrics of a song or anything related to sudden communication coming in written form like that on a screen, do the souls that are generating that information know that they are delivering that information to you? And are their souls literally trying to communicate and encourage me?
Yes. It could be your own soul, could be your own higher mind, but it can also be your spirit guides, members of your soul family, members of the angelic realm, other ETs, other dimensionals that are using synchronicity to deliver information that will help you. So yes, it's a deliberate act of connection and communication from whatever the source is to help you out. The fact that you experience the synchronicity means it is for you. Now, synchronicities can be holographically multidimensional, and synchronicities can serve many different people simultaneously. If more than one person is experiencing the synchronicity, there may be messages in there for all the people experiencing it. And that, again, is a deliberate act that may be coming from many different sources in a multidimensional way. But the bottom line is, yes, it's a message for you.
And so when you are, or an individual is hearing information from another person, and they're seeing that the person is giving them a nonsensical belief, but they're buying into it, but the individual listening is buying into it, is a result of not knowing themselves that they
Yes.
would do that?
Yes. That's why it's so important to know yourself, to know what is truly working for you and what is not, to take what advice allows you to grow and be self-empowered, and leave behind those things that don't. It's learning that discernment. That's one of the lessons of physical reality, learning what is and isn't truly you. And that's why you can always use what isn't you to help you understand more clearly what is you.
And why are we experiencing this physical form? Can we experience similar limitations in another form? Why this one now?
There are some other forms in which you can experience the idea of limitations, but as we have said, the Earth cycles is one of the more concentrated places to experience this idea of limitation. And therefore it means, as we have said, it's a master graduating class. You have decided to take a class that allows you to really stretch and exercise the powers you know you have accumulated in the growth of the soul up to this point. So in other words, you don't choose to stay in kindergarten or first grade forever. You say, all right, let's move on to the second grade and the third grade and the fourth grade. I'm going to learn more. I'm going to push myself. I'm going to challenge myself. Otherwise, it would be, quote unquote, boring to do the same thing over and over again. Let's see, where can I find something that's a real interesting challenge? Oh, look at what's going on Earth. Let's do that. We're ready for that. We're ready to really accelerate our growth. We're really ready to learn some interesting things because that's the school that offers it. That's why people choose to go to college. That's why people choose to have master's degrees, PhDs. They want to continue to learn and grow and stretch and expand. Earth is one of those places where you can really do some expanding if you get the point, if you learn what the class is all about, if you're willing to learn the lesson.
When the Earth School began, for humans, I suppose,
Yes.
how did that whole thing get created? Was that like a convergence of a multitude of consciousnesses
Yes.
coming together and thinking this up, or as a continuation of a whole galactic story? Is that
Yes. Groups of individuals, groups of souls, councils of souls, soul families, everyone participates in the creation of an experience like a planet called Earth and similar planets and all planets. It is created on a very high level by consensus through different groups of souls as to what would be interesting and exciting for the souls to experience to continue the idea of their expansion and their growth. Yes, it's a part of the evolution of existence itself. Souls come together on different levels, in different frequencies, and they agree to create these things. Just like someone might decide to come together to create a theme park. Well, I need these people to come together. I need those people that know how to do that to come in. We need these souls to come in who know how to do that and suggest this and suggest that. And before you know it, there it is. And now we can all share in it.
And it seems like the prime directive that souls experience, in a sense, is the idea of expansion, growth. This seems to be the most fundamental desire, I guess, of
It is the impetus of existence. You have to understand what infinite actually means. Infinity has a momentum. So the idea is that existence itself provides the momentum by its very existence to continue to fill infinity. It's attempting to be all that it is. That attempt to be all that it is. It is all that is, but it also contains the attempt to be all that it is. That's the active principle. So there's the structure, and then there's the active principle. That's why you see in our family sigil the triskelion, the triangle with the spiral in it. There is the structure represented by the triangle, but there is the active principle. That's what you call the act of creation, the act of being. So that creates that sensation, that momentum, that urge, that drive, that desire to fill it all up, to fill infinity, to know yourself on every possible level. And it's infinite. So it's that drive to know yourself, to be yourself, and the act of becoming and being yourself that continues that expansion. It's the nature. It's the active nature. It's the active nature of existence. There's the structural nature of existence and the active nature of existence, what you call creation.
So, like you've described in the past, I guess the idea of terraforming planets and moving planets, that level of consciousness that's capable of things that are beyond, in our minds, beyond our wildest dreams of what is possible.
Well, there are levels to that idea. There can be terraforming projects, as you call it, that can take a planet body, a form that already exists, and convert it through technology to something that might be more compatible to certain forms of life. That's one level of it. What we were talking about is the actual creation of an experience going from the spirit level into the physical level on a huge consensus level reality of co-creation by many different souls, to actually bring the very idea of the planet into physical existence in much the same way that you bring the physical mind into existence at the center of the soul. So there is a consensus level on a greater level, again, greater than even what you typically refer to as the oversoul. That's an oversoul of oversouls of oversouls that actually comes together to create within the center of its being a physical experience that contains the experience of many souls on what you call a planet. It's a larger version, a much larger version of creating a single physical identity. It's a consensus identity within a much larger oversoul. That's what a planet is. A consensus identity of many souls within an amazingly large oversoul consciousness at the center of its being.
It's amazing.
Yes.
So we have some questions that relate to the Interstellar Alliance ID card.
Yes.
One of them was, what do the 5 stars on the Interstellar Alliance ID card represent?
The 5 hybrid races that already exist.
And you provided that as step 4. Is it okay to translate the words on the card into a foreign language so they can use the card more easily in areas where English is not native?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. And since the Greys initiated the hybrid agenda together with the Mantids, resulting in the Sasani, Yael, and other races with open contact in its final stages, it would seem that the role of the Greys themselves would be over. Yet many contactees still feel an active connection and interest in them in particular, in their particular Grey counterparts, even today. And what are these Grey counterparts seeking to experience in the unfolding of open contact, which they themselves initiated so long ago through their own.
We must remind you to stop talking about the Greys as if there's only one single faction. There are many factions of Greys. The different factions have different agendas, come from different places, different times, different parallel realities, and are at different stages of the entire process, even though they may be interacting with your planet or different versions of it. So you are experiencing, based on your vibration, different stages of the idea of interactions with Greys, different points in their evolution. And therefore, it depends upon what's going on in your vibration that will determine what faction of grays you may still or not be still interacting with. That's all we can say right now about that. But don't treat the grays as if there's only one faction that you're dealing with.
Okay, and this person says they were told that reptilian beings are dangerous in the Sedona area at this time.
No,
Is that
no,
accurate?
no. It is not correct.
Okay. Are there a lot of misunderstandings about, I guess, reptilians, and are
Yes.
they?
As I've said before, they are a certain kind of species that invokes in the limbic system of your physical brain the idea of a fight or flight response because of the nature of their vibration, because you look at them as predatory, because that's the way you relate to the idea of reptilian DNA. And therefore, humans, mammalians, have a fight or flight survival fear-based response to exposure to the reptilian vibration. It doesn't mean they actually intend to do you harm. It's just the nature of their frequency as it relates to the nature of the mammalian frequency that represent human beings.
Okay, and this person is saying, let's say I experience open contact 3 to 6 years from now. Will I be able to learn specialty skills from members of the Interstellar Alliance, for example, as a different form of higher education? How might one then be able to use those skills on Earth?
Well, yes, of course, that's going to be possible. And of course, you will be learning things that obviously will be applicable to Earth society. So when you choose a subject, then you will understand how it is applicable on Earth.
Okay, and this person is saying they would like to know, how does one know the difference between what the higher mind is advising versus what the physical mind is thinking? Basically, how do we distinguish the voices in our head and know which path to follow?
Well, again, the higher mind doesn't usually come as a voice in your head, although it can. It's more about the idea of, again, seeing the reflection in a situation, in a circumstance, in an opportunity that is filled with excitement, curiosity, attractiveness, and passion. That's the way that the higher mind communicates with the physical mind. You translate its messages into the sensation called passion, curiosity, excitement, attraction. It's different than the idea of what the physical mind thinks about it. That's a reflective reaction. Because again, thinking and thought patterns come from the beliefs in the physical mind. If you let yourself feel in your heart what it is you are truly excited about being and doing, that is more representative of a communication from the higher mind, as opposed to the idea of the thinking thought patterns that the physical mind exhibits about what the higher mind has sent it.
Okay, and this person is saying, to be honest, I'm not sure that the idea of open contact will really manifest in my reality because I have never particularly been interested in UFOs or aliens. However, since embarking on a spiritual path as a natural progression of life events, I came across your material, and some of what you say really resonates with me, or as you put it, strikes a chord. I wanted to ask if you represent a certain high vibration within me that has manifested you in my reality, or in other words, if you're an aspect of my multidimensionality that we share, regardless of the ideas of open contact UFOs or aliens.
Yes, because again, first and foremost, we are functioning as a reflection of your own higher mind, of your own soul. That doesn't require the idea of extraterrestrial contact to take advantage of. That's first and foremost. It can lead more easily to the idea of open contact to allow your own physical mind to connect more strongly with your higher mind, your soul. But that's the first step, is a representation of your own higher mind. That's how we function. Now, the fact that you're asking the question of an extraterrestrial can be an indication that it is a high probability that this will lead to some form of contact. But no, it doesn't have to. The most important thing is that it helps you understand how to communicate with your own higher mind to interact with us.
And how would you compare the idea of having an interdimensional communication or encounter with another being versus ET contact?
Well, again, it's not always important to tell the difference if the information services you in a way, helps you in a way. Sometimes when you become sensitive enough, you might be able to feel the difference in vibration, and you can assign that particular feeling to an extra-dimensional or extraterrestrial or spirit guide or something like that. But it's not always important to make that distinction if the information itself is what's more important to focus on.
So the whole idea of as we raise our vibration, ET contact becomes a side effect in a sense.
Yes.
Because now you have access to more of things in existence.
Yes, let me give you a very simplistic example. Let's say someone is living in your United States and they decide they're going to move to France. Well, of course, once they move to France, they have surrounded themselves with more opportunities to interact with French things. It's a side effect of the move of where it is they chose to move. So when you raise your vibration, it's like moving to another country. And the things that are relevant for experiencing in that country happen as the natural side effects because those are the things that happen in that country. So certain things happen in higher frequency realities than happen in other frequency realities. You will experience all the things that are relevant for that higher frequency reality when you decide to move there.
And this person is saying they're new to joining the social experiment, and they would you recommend that we start doing steps 1 through 4 all at the same time, or should we pace ourselves using the same timing in which you originally presented the steps, starting with step 1 and then adding on a step per month?
It's completely up to you. Either can work.
And there are some other Sasani channels who are also speaking of the Interstellar Alliance and a version of the steps which you are giving us. And I will be following your instructions, but why would they be telling us something a bit different?
Different people need to hear things in different ways and may need to take slightly different steps or different versions of the steps because it fits their belief system a little bit differently. So we will give you all the choices, multidimensional, holographically, all the different ways in which the steps can be done based on the different belief systems, the different styles of approach, the different way you absorb information, the different ways you interpret things based on your belief systems and your life experiences. So sometimes a step has to be altered slightly for this belief system and cultural experience. Sometimes it has to be altered slightly for this different belief system and cultural experience. Essentially, they'll all get you to the same basic place.